Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy. Okay, so I am super excited. I was able to do a Q&A and interview with Kelly Hogan. I'm sure many of you guys know who she is. For those of you that don't, she has been zero carb carnivore for over 10 years. And she is not only healthy, she is thriving. She had 3 pregnancies, she breastfed 3 babies, all on a zero carb carnivore way of life. When I first started carnivore about 2 years ago, I read up on her blog. She gave me a lot of inspiration, and she is such a genuinely good and funny person. And so I was able to talk to her, this person that has motivated me to try a way of eating that has honestly changed my life. So I cannot wait for you guys to hear the interview and see how sweet of a person that Kelly is, and also gives you the hope that you can actually do this diet for long term and it is not something that is dangerous for you. All right, let's get into it. Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy, and I am so excited to have Kelly Hogan on the YouTube channel today to do a Q&A. For many of us, we are relatively new to carnivore, and we may have done it for 1 to 3 years, but Kelly has been doing it for 10 years. And so I know a lot of us have questions about, is this diet safe long-term? And so I would love to just have Kelly share her story and give her all of her wisdom. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Judy. I am thrilled to be on here. I've heard your story as well, which was incredibly inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
Young mom and all of your past addictions, and I commend you greatly. I have a lot of respect for you, so thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so for those that may not have heard your story, if you can sort of share your story and, what led you to the carnivore journey.
Absolutely. So when I was, basically my entire life, Judy, I was just a heavy kid, a heavy teenager, a heavy young adult. I gained a lot of weight in college, and I always wanted to be thin. I have a mother who never struggled with weight when I was a kid, so that was, and a brother who never struggled with weight, but me and my dad did. Okay. And people would all the time say, "Oh, you look like your dad," and I was like, "Oh, yay!" Right? Which, it's not a bad thing, but that's not exactly what a little girl who's struggling with weight wants to hear. Is, you look like your dad who's struggling with weight.
Right.
True, I did take more after him. My parents, back when I was a kid, I'm 40 now, they did not know that it was the carbs and the sugars, so they would keep giving us, low-fat oatmeal, sugar with cereal, lots of sugary cereals, but it was deemed fat-free, and so they thought they were doing us a service, I guess. And nobody, most people didn't know back then, but my brother did not balloon up, and I did. So it was a frustrating thing that we were eating the same foods and it did not affect me the same way. I would try to starve myself at times, like high school. I went through some phases where I could get pretty slim, but then I couldn't keep it up long because it involved basically just not eating. I would eat very, very little until I couldn't take it anymore, and then I would eat all of the things. And I know I've heard you talk about that too. Yes. I was never a purger because I physically could not make that happen. I used to be like almost angry about it, like, why can't I make myself get rid of it? Is that not ridiculous? Yes. So I actually felt kind of bummed out that I couldn't make that work. And I thought, oh, just another reason I'm always going to be fat. Ridiculous. But if I had been able to have changed anything about my life, I think that's probably what it would have been. I just wanted to be able to eat and be thin, like some of my family members. I wanted to look like my mom. And after high school, I told you in college, I was happy and busy, and I just sort of forgot about the weight thing. I was getting ready for a career, and I had a fiance, and I really gained a lot of weight. And at that point was when I started having some health concerns as well. I was getting boils or abscesses, like spots on my legs and my thighs would come up that would have to be cut or lanced, drained, repeated staph infections. very painful, and they would get cellulitis around them. I remember there was a time I was 25 years old. I could hobble into my church. I was headed there to do a skit, and I was walking like I was 80. I weighed 262 pounds at that point, and I was miserable, just miserable. And I went to see my doctor, and my doctor said, these places that I keep having to lance on you, it's going to continue. That's what we're going to have to keep doing until you change your diet and lose 100 pounds. I was like, well, that would be great. At which point, I cried because, like, of course I want to lose 100 pounds. What would I not give to lose 100 pounds? But I did not know how to do that. And that's when he gave me a paper, a little brochure that explained what is a carbohydrate. And he went through it very patiently. He was probably at that point in his late 70s. He's now just retired. But he was so smart. He was talking to me about the Inuit Indians. And I was like, oh, what? I'd never heard any of this. I honest to goodness at that point did not know what a carbohydrate was. I knew nothing. All I was like, oh, I thought I was supposed to be eating fat-free. And he's like, no, stop with the fat-free. This is not the answer for you.
All right.
So on the pamphlet, on the front, it had all of the carby foods, and on the back, it had many kinds of meats and eggs and cheeses. And he did include some very low-carb vegetables, but not many. And I really was never much of a vegetable eater anyway. So I didn't focus on those. I really was like, oh, meat, eggs, and cheese. Well, that sounds good. And I said, now how much of these can I eat? And he's like, if that's all you're eating, go for it. Just eat all you want. It's like, I've toyed around with this starvation thing. I don't think this is going to really work. And I was still pretty emotional at the time. He said, just do it for 1 year. Come see me. Well, at that point, I was seeing him way more than once a year because of all of these staph infections. So I basically thought, yeah, well, I'll see you way before then. But I left there and I took it very seriously. I called my dad that day. I said, okay, Dad, I'm going to stop eating carbohydrates. He's like, okay, well, moderation is key kind of thing. I was like, well, he didn't make it sound like moderation. This sounded pretty serious. And he said, okay, well, it started to work very quickly. Within a month, honestly, that first month lost about 30 pounds.
Wow. Okay.
I know, but I had a lot to lose also.
So how tall are you, Kelly?
I'm 5'8.5", almost 5.
Okay.
So 262 pounds. I was a big girl, but that's pretty obese.
Okay.
But not quite the same as somebody that's 5'2", I suppose.
Yeah.
1 year later, I went back to see him. I had not had one single boil or infection in a year, and I had lost 80 pounds.
Wow. And during that time, did you have any carbs?
So I was eating vegetables, like green beans.
Yeah, that's right.
Green beans, pickles, like the lowest, pretty low carb, but almost all meat, eggs, and cheese for the first year. And things went great. He was so proud of me. I mean, he said, oh my gosh, no one ever listens to me. I can't believe you did this. Solid advice. I feel great. And I did. That has now been 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for the first 5 years, I did eat some low carb vegetables.
Oh, okay.
And I did lose the weight. But here's where the problem came in for me and why I'm such more of an advocate for zero carb over low carb. For 5 years, I stuck with it. I did not cheat as in like sweets or not a single piece of bread or potato, but I did still have the vegetables. My cravings never went away.
Oh, okay.
No, I wanted carbs for 5 straight years. That's tough.
Yeah.
It was hard. I was exercising like crazy because I also, keeping those vegetables in my diet, was not able to maintain my weight. I eventually lost 125 pounds. And I wasn't able to maintain that without exercising a lot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it was tiring. I thought, I can't keep this up forever. At
Yeah.
some point, also my cycle had stopped, and I
Oh,
wanted to have children. I mean, it totally had stopped.
when did your cycle stop?
Um, After I had lost all of the weight,
Okay.
maybe about 3 years into low carb,
Oh, I see. Okay. And
and
okay.
and I think it could have been partly because I was exercising so much,
Okay.
and I had lost so much weight.
Right.
125 pounds can throw off things,
Yeah.
cycle wise. But so that's when I started to realize I can't keep this up forever. So what could I change? Could I go lower on the carbs? And
Mhm.
my dad and other people, not just him, were like, well, then you're only eating meat. And I was like, only eating meat? Is it possible, right? Is that a
Right.
thing? Well, I started Googling, and what do you know? It's a thing. I found Charles Washington and about Stephenson, and then
Okay.
I was reminded about the Inuit Indians. I was like, oh, they didn't just come up with this now. That's a thing. People
Right.
ate meat, and they were successful and had great lives.
Mhm.
And that's when I cut it out completely, and that was 10 years ago in October. So I just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of
Okay.
zero carb. And within probably 7 months, my cycle was back and I was pregnant.
Wow. Okay. I
Yeah.
think I heard on a podcast that you were on that you initially went lower, like you were eating higher protein and still doing sort of like lower fat. And
Yes.
so, and that didn't help you too much, right? Do you want to talk
That's
about that a little bit?
terrible. That's a terrible idea, right? So I was already low on the carbs. I'm exercising like crazy, still having vegetables, so I'm constantly craving all of the things I can't have.
Yeah.
And exhausted. And then I thought, how can I get low? I became obsessed, honestly, with the idea of being skinnier and skinnier.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know.
And in order to do that, I thought, what could I cut out? Oh, it must be the fat. So then I went back to my old ways of thinking like I should probably do chicken breast with my green beans. Well, now I'm exhausted. I have brain fog. I was skinny, but gaunt looking skinny.
Yeah.
I really didn't look that great. I felt, I wasn't sickly. I never had any more of the boils. I still haven't had one in 15 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
My cycle was gone, but I was eating chicken breasts and a few green beans here and there. And once I discovered the all meat thing, they were like, whoa, chicken breasts? What are you doing with that mess? And they said, you need to eat some fat. Go eat fat. Get beef. Just eat fatty cuts of beef. And when I tasted a steak again, and it was just a big old plate of steak, it was like my eyes were opened again. I'm like, oh, I could just be eating this all the time, just this. And they were like, yeah, just this. So to me, it didn't really feel restrictive because it tasted amazing.
Right.
And I had energy and the brain fog was gone. My cycle came back pretty quickly. And I wasn't hungry. The cravings went away. So 5 years of torture was then like, oh, okay, I feel happy now. I did. I really felt happy.
Right. So, and I totally can relate because whenever I've gone low fat, for me, it was the cravings. There's also the mental health aspect. So, like the depression, the anxiety. So, I totally understand. Two questions for you. So, one, I think I heard when you initially went higher fat, you did gain a little bit of weight. And I think that's a lot of people's fears, right? So, they're like, are you sure? I get asked so many questions. How much meat can I eat when I go, zero carb carnivore? I'm not losing weight. And so what would be your recommendation for, all these people that are coming for one, maybe for weight loss, and then they don't see the dramatic results that maybe some other people have? And so if you can kind of talk about that and your journey with the initial weight gain and then sort of how it kind of came off.
All right. So I feel like for most people that are eating a standard American diet that are overweight, if they were to go zero carb, I don't care how much meat they eat. I do not see most people, and the group that I'm a part of has over 25,000 people. So I've seen this with a lot of people. They do not normally gain. Here are the people that show up and gain. People who are already at approximately the weight they probably should be. They're already finished. They've been starving themselves, exercising like crazy. And then all of a sudden, just like me, they're like, oh, so I'll quit exercising, eat pounds and pounds of meat per day, and see how this goes. Well, here's how it's likely going to go. You're going to gain for a little bit. Your body has been starved. Your body is overworked, and it doesn't trust you at all. Your body is a little bit ticked, honestly. And so it's finally like, oh, food, hang on to all of the things. And so over about 6 months' time, I gained 20 pounds.
Okay.
People who saw me argued that I looked better with it, though, honestly. My eyes stopped looking gaunt. I didn't look like a fluffy 20 pounds. It was like, okay, you look good. We were scared for you. But I did not like the 20 pounds.
Sure.
It looked to me, I felt so overweight. I whined on the forum. There was a zero carb forum. And I whined all the time. I was like, I'm up another pound. And they're like, just stop. This is not forever. Your body needs this. And I said, I need to go back to the gym. No, you don't. Sit still. This is not the time. Just rest. And so I do occasionally see it, but I still stand by what I was told. You are not going to get fat eating a zero carb diet. If your body needs to gain a little bit, it will, and that weight will come off. For me, I gained for 6 months. It equaled about 20 pounds. So it wasn't a super fast 20, but it equaled about 20. Looking at pictures, I now think, what on earth was I so upset about? I looked fine.
Right.
Most people didn't notice at all except to say, oh, you look like you're feeling great, complimentary. And then after that 6 months was over, it's not that I stopped eating as much. I didn't change what I was doing. It's like my body finally relaxed.
Sure.
Okay, we're fed. People have said, oh, so did you start cutting way back then? I was like, no, I didn't. I just kept eating, but my appetite did decrease a little bit. And I wasn't eating quite as much. But I would advise, if you mentally can handle it, just indulge your body for that little while. Get some flowy dresses, feel cute without being like, oh, I see every little bump, and just enjoy eating and resting for a little while. And you might gain for a little bit, and then just trust that when your body has had what it needs, then it'll come back off. I feel like sometimes people rush that and they're like, I feel like my appetite is relaxed. I'm going to eat half as much now. But you're rushing a process that I think is actually very important. And if you ever want to get to that point, I think you just need to eat. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. So I've always, so before I became carnivore, I read so much on, people like you and a lot of the zero carb carnivores. And so that's how I always, even starting the infographics, I always labeled it as zero carb carnivore, because I think the fundamentals that group followed, it just makes so much sense in terms of how you're supposed to eat carnivore. And I always say, don't count your macros, don't count your calories, because you have to allow your body to heal. And then a lot of people, their initial argument is, my body and my brain are disconnected. And so there's never a point that I want to stop eating. And so they're really afraid. Some of them come from keto. And so they're so used to counting macros. And I think they might have all been under eating. And so then, when they're like, oh, I just want to lose the last 5 pounds. And so they go carnivore. And like you said, then there's a good chance they will gain weight initially because their body was starved, and that's why maybe they can't hit the last 5. And so they may have to, replenish their body, but so they'll have to go up first to then go back down and lose the 5. But a lot of people are not willing to trust that process. And then there's
it's really scary.
Right. And so I always bring you up as an example and say, no, the long time carnivores, they go through this process. They eat sometimes 4 to 6 pounds of meat, and they let their bodies find that balance, and then the body will start trusting you again to nourish it, and then it'll find that new balance, right? Yeah. And then there's some people that all of a sudden go from the standard American diet, maybe had paleo, and then they eat carnivore, and then they lose their appetite, and they're like, wow, I could finally lose weight. I don't have that appetite. and then they severely start under eating. So I see people eat like 2 beef patties a day, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And I say long term, you're going to start losing your cycle. You're going to have all the hormone disruptions because you are not nourishing your body enough. So these are the two big struggles I see. And so I love that you're sharing your story because, it's really having to trust the process, and it may take, right? So how during that time, so I guess it's two questions. For the 5-year time, how did you get over your cravings? So when you were battling your cravings, how did you not kind of cave into them? And then 2, in the 6 months that you gained weight, like how did you trust the process that, because once people set the bar of like, oh, I've gotten to this weight, I want to go lower, not ever higher.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that mental struggle as well?
Not well. My friends who I still keep in touch with, quite a few of these zero carbers many of them had only been doing this for a little while longer than when I started. They were new too, but most of them started heavy, and they were on this lowering. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And they're like, you don't need to lose weight. I really didn't need to. And they were trying to remind me of that. And they kept saying, stay focused.
Yes.
Don't you want a baby? And that to me was like, yes. That was one thing I really did have going for me. It wasn't just about weight for me. It really had to become about health because I wanted a baby so badly. And obviously no baby, no hope for baby. I mean, no cycle, no hope for baby.
Yeah.
So I needed this visual that things were working again.
Sure.
And that if this is important, you've got to get your health back, or you're not going to get what you really want. So I can get how if it weren't for that, I may not have been as apt to push through. We'd like to all think that our own health is important enough, but we know most people want to be skinny more than healthy, right? Yeah. It's hard to say I'm going to gain weight for this little while, but if you really look your whole long life, what do you want out of life? You want to feel good. You want to look beautiful, as in healthy. You want children. You want to be around for the children. I'd say like focus on something other than your pants for just a little while and the scale. And then at some point, the beauty is you can completely stop thinking about it. So at this point, 10 years later, I don't even know what I weigh, but I'm going to assume that it's the same I did 9 months ago when I weighed, and a year before that when I weighed, and a year before that, because it just stopped changing. So mentally, for me, it has become much easier to not step on the scale every day, even though you see basically the exact same number. Any little ounce that would go up was like, oh no. And now I'm like, no. Yeah. Over a year, it stays the same because I'm eating the same. I'm eating meat till fullness, drinking water till thirst is quenched. And I go about my day. And what a blessing. I don't have to worry about my clothes fitting anymore. I don't worry about the scale anymore. I just live life. If that's your long-term goal, then I would say short-term for just a few, maybe even 6 months. Yeah. Maybe longer, depending on how old you are and how long you have punished yourself.
Right.
Some people have done it. I was only 25, 30 when I really started zero carb.
Right.
I was fairly young.
Yes.
I've seen it take longer than 6 months. So let's say it takes a year. 1 year of just resting and healing and eating and maybe gaining to then have the next 50 years where you don't have to think about it.
Thank you. Yes. I think that's so good because I think a lot of people end up falling in that middle kind of gaining weight. And so then they go back to keto or they go back to something else. And then they, it's this like hop on and off, but they're always stuck in that middle part where they're kind of getting some health, but not fully there. And they're stuck in that area of craving. So they'll have many good days, but they'll also have many bad days where they, go through that cycle. And I think it's, again, so good and so important for someone that's, a veteran that's been doing this for a decade, saying, hey, no, you have to go through this process, trust it, but it's, tried and true. It is healing. From your experience with all the people in your community, have you seen that most people end up at a weight that's, they're kind of happy about?
I would say most people don't gain in the beginning when they cut out all carbs. Most people don't gain at all. For those that do gain, it's temporary. It comes back off. And most people do end up eventually realizing, oh, I look better having gained that little weight, because when the weight comes back off, it doesn't leave you gaunt like that, like I looked before. It's like the weight comes off, but I'm not left with that like sunken eyes. And yeah, you
just look healthier. Your skin's glowing. I totally understand what you're saying. It's
I may be the same scale number, but I don't look the same as I did when I first started this process. Also, you asked me how I made it through that 5 years with the horrible cravings. Girl, that was so bad. I would like pace myself with sugar-free Jell-O to get myself through the day. So much garbage, sweeteners, like just trying to get a hit. How much sugar-free Jell-O can a person consume? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I maxed it out with garbage. Like, it was 5 years of just trying to make it through the day. And that compared to my life now, where food, I'm not an addict. I'm absolutely completely free of that. When I'm hungry, I eat a pile of beef of some sort, usually burger patties, because it's cheap and easy, and I call them meat cookies. And so I eat a pile of meat cookies, and then I'm not hungry for hours and hours, and I'm not thinking, oh, what can I do to keep my mind off of it?
Right.
I just live life. That idea of trying to keep my mind off of food, that is a horrible way to live life.
Oh, yeah.
I try to keep my mind off of the peanut butter in the cabinet. Like, stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about going to get something out of the fridge. Just keep busy. And now I'm like, I'm full. I'm happy. I don't have to force myself not to eat. I'm free of it.
That's the beauty I always talk about with carnivore. So one of the biggest questions I always get is, well, if you eat only meat, don't you get bored? And that's such a restrictive diet, right? And I always say that the mental health aspect, well, one, you don't feel restricted once you're really, carnivore, right? And and so every day that taste of meat, it's just that good. But two, it's just the amount of freedom you finally get from like that whole, the cocktail party in your head about, oh, should I go eat that? Should I eat that? Oh, when's my next meal? What am I going to eat? What fits my calories? All of that is gone. And you are able to live your life accordingly and enjoying the real fruit in life, right? And so that's why I always say, maybe technically it's restrictive in the kinds of foods you can eat, but you will never taste freedom. The lack of sugar in your, of cravings, and you will never understand that until you go full carnivore and do it for months at least. And so, you're saying the exact same thing that I truly believe. And it's, it's really powerful. I think it's unfortunate because no one else can understand that until you try it, right?
That's right. It's complete. People who say, oh, I couldn't do that, I'm thinking, then you don't know the prison that I was in.
Yes.
And great, good for you. That's awesome. If you think you couldn't possibly change what you're doing to feel like I feel, then you are currently not feeling like I used to. And wonderful. I'm glad. I don't know that my husband ever feels the way I used to feel. He is not a carnivore. Food is basically food to him, but I know that for some of us, food is never just food, or never was for me. It was like a prison that I kept myself in from trying to constantly control myself was exhausting.
Yeah.
And now I'm free of that, and it doesn't feel, when people say restrictive, that just seems funny to me. Like, I feel the least restricted that I've ever felt in my life.
Right. No, I completely understand. And my husband, he was not for carnivore, but the dramatic kind of change he's seen in me and my mood, and like me not, pacing back and forth around the kitchen, all the sugar-free snacks you were talking about, he sees a 180-degree change with me. And so he no longer is like, are you sure you're going to just eat meat the rest of my life? You know, so he's become a believer. And I think he's also like your husband. He's more of a moderator. So he can do with a little bit of this and that. And he's not a binger, you know what I mean? So, and, you know, like some people get the luck of the draw that way, right? So they can have a good weight. Like my brother is exactly like your brother, super thin. And it was always like, that is not fair, right? But you have to, I always tell clients, I always tell followers that you have to work with what you have, understand who you are, and then function accordingly so that you can have that freedom in your life. And so, you know, I think a lot of people come to carnivore for physical health changes, but it's also this mental change in the kind of like jail that you live in with food, and especially with carbohydrates. So in terms of your eating, what do you typically eat in a day? I know you kind of mentioned you had the meat cookies. So what do you typically eat in a day? How often? How many pounds of meat? And then how many pounds of meat did you eat in that 6-month window where you kind of gained?
I was having like a giant meat party for that 6 months. It was basically just constantly, I was so hungry.
Yeah.
Finally tasted food again. I mean, my body was hungry. So I don't know. I didn't measure, but I'm going to tell you, it was a lot of meat. I was just eating a lot of meat, just cooking up bowls and bowls, pouring all the rendered fat in there.
Okay.
Just could not get enough fat for that 6 months.
Okay.
The fact that I only gained 20 pounds is actually pretty astounding. I mean, I was killing it, really killing it.
Okay.
Now, about 2 pounds of meat, sometimes just a little bit shy of 2 pounds of meat keeps me quite happy. I'm currently in a pattern. I hate to always be like, and this is what I do, because things change. But I'm going to say for maybe even the last 2 years or so, I've been in a pattern of just eating a really big lunch, at 1 pound for lunch, and then half a pound to a pound, whatever is left over, to make up about 2 pounds of meat for dinner. And then I'm usually not hungry again until lunch the next day.
Okay. Do you add, I know you said you added a little bit of rendered fat, but I mean, do you add like butter or, you know, ghee, or do you eat eggs ever?
On the weekends, my husband loves to scramble eggs.
Okay.
For the kids, so he'll sometimes throw some in there for me at breakfast, and he'll say, "Do you want any eggs?" I'm like, nah. He says, "Oh, let's do it." So yeah, I sit down and have a bowl of eggs with them for breakfast. As for do I add anything, that varies greatly. Some days I do not want to add anything to my burgers, and so I don't. And right now, I am really in tune with what I want. In the beginning,
Good.
I think I just wanted all of the fat all of the time.
Okay.
And then I sort of settled into a phase of like, I don't know, do I really? Because it is hard to read hunger signals after you've screwed around with them for so many years.
Right.
But now I'm like, I know how hungry I am. I need 1 pound of beef, no added fat. You know, I know exactly.
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
There are days where I add bacon. I keep a glass bowl of bacon grease, like in our fridge.
I do too.
So some days I take my meat cookies and I ice them with my bacon fat. My people I eat lunch with, they are so used to me because I've been at this job for 19 years.
Oh, wow.
So they've seen me through this entire process, and they know me and my iced meat cookies. And they're used to it. But one lady today came to join us. She's like, "What is that you're eating?" I said, "Burgers." She said, "What is all over them?" I said, "That's bacon grease." She's like, "Oh." It was so funny. She's eating her salad like, oh my. Which really at this point does not faze me at all.
Right. So what about electrolytes and you know, like supplementation? So do you have to worry about, you know, oh wait, did I get my sodium, my potassium, my magnesium, you know, all those things that a lot of the folks worry about nowadays?
If I should be worrying, I don't know about it. No, I'm kidding. All my blood work shows that everything is normal. I will say that sometimes, different times of year, I will wake up occasionally with a leg cramp.
Okay.
And for me, it does seem like if I salt my burgers, like if I'm in like I woke up last night with a leg cramp. For me, carnivores, I'm not advising that everyone dump salt all over their food. But for me, it seems like if my meat is really unsalted,
Okay.
I might get a leg cramp. And so then I might salt my burgers for a couple of days and then it's okay. That would be the closest I come to supplementing, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of times people do come to me for leg cramps as well. And so most times it's either the salt or adding a little bit of magnesium. Both of those typically will help. And it's just, I mean, you may have, sweated a little bit more during the day and then you just need a balance. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest one I hear, and it's typically resolved with salt or magnesium. And that makes a lot of sense. What about supplements? Do you supplement at all? I mean, there's that fear of fiber and vitamin C and calcium. Do you?
No. I did worry a little bit in the very beginning, especially since at the around the 9-month mark of carnivore, I found out I was pregnant.
Okay, right.
Pregnant, like my first baby, scary new mommy. I had never talked to Charlene Anderson, who has been carnivore for 20 some years. There was nothing to really read about that said, oh, sure, you can just eat meat while you're pregnant. It'll be fine. Nothing. Okay. And that was really intimidating. So I did take prenatal vitamins. I've told people I don't know that that's necessary. I was just a scared mom who had a doctor who was like, oh my gosh, you better be taking something. And I was like, okay, I'll take a prenatal. I did. It worked out fine. But since then, there are many women who have had 0-carb pregnancies. Yes. And many of us have been very vocal and have written about it to say, look, if you're pregnant, you're a human carrying a human. You know how much better you feel eating this way. Yeah. Your fetus will too. It's okay. It's just a tiny human. And now I've had 3 0-carb pregnancies. I was obviously a lot more relaxed with the third one. And if I ever had, well, I won't, but if I had more, that's the only way I would like to do pregnancy.
Did you nurse your kids on carnivore? Because that's another question I get all the time is, can you stay carnivore, and how do you know that your milk supply doesn't dip, because, all that. So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I nursed all 3 of my babies while carnivore. And I think I do see many moms come and comment to say, I feel like I have less milk today. Is it because of the carnivore diet? Ladies, it's a milk supply. It's supply and demand. Your body's making milk. Your baby's demanding it. They're going to have days where they demand more than you feel like you have. I feel like most women of all diets go through that. But breast milk is mostly fat and water. Mm-hmm. It's not made up, you don't need to eat broccoli to make good breast milk. You really don't. You eat plenty of fat. I did feel like I craved fat a little more while I was breastfeeding, and I tried to drink lots of water. And when I felt like my supply was going down, I allowed the baby to demand more and more. Smart. So just let them keep asking, keep nursing, even when you feel like you're not giving anything, and your body will begin to supply. Drink your water, eat your steak, and let your baby nurse and nurse and nurse. Sleep when you can. And I feel like those are the best things that I did to get the milk that I needed. But I did have days where I felt like, oh, I don't know if I have enough. But talking to many women, I'm an elementary teacher, so I mostly work with women, and they have lots of babies. They all feel like that sometimes. Like, breastfeeding is just hard. I'm not going to, claim that if you only eat meat, that you're going to never feel like you have a little too less. What am I trying to say? That you
apply.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I never thought of that. That's really interesting, because I think when we do something different than the norm, we sort of blame that thing, which is the carnivore diet. But I think you're right. I mean, now that I think about it, everyone I know that's on the standard American diet, that is the concern. It's the, oh my gosh, my milk supply is low, but they never blame the diet. Normally it's like, oh, there must be something in your diet that's making it low, but never, oh, that you're eating carbs or sugars. My youngest son right now is almost 3.5, and I still nurse him, and I'm on carnivore. So I did notice a change. So when he was 1, I was still eating carbs, and I did notice that I felt like my supply was less, but I think maybe the fat content was more, because, I mean, he's still nursing. So I just don't think moms should blame carnivore, because, I mean, we have so many anecdotal stories where, tried and true, it works. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you for sharing that and sharing that you had 3 pregnancies, 3 successful pregnancies, and 3 kids that, nursed and were on the carnivore diet. So going back a little bit to eating, there are, right now, I mean, there's the nose to tail is so popular right now.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted your take on it, and what you thought of I guess, the whole movement. Do you think, people need to eat all these like fancy organy stuff? So.
Well, I'm glad someone is eating it. I'd hate for it to go to waste. That's awesome. I don't seek that out. If I were somewhere and they were serving up something unusual, as long as it was part of an animal, I would probably give it a go.
Okay.
That does not normally happen to me, though. I'm not normally in a situation where, like, here, eat this new part of a cow. I am basically just eating ground beef, and I keep it very simple. And I have tried the fancier beef, the grass finished,
Right.
and I do hear some people say you should eat this type of meat and that type of meat. I really feel like, for me, and I feel amazing, if I started having any issues at all, like anything, suddenly I think, man, I wish I had whatever, better skin. I wish this, I wish I had less brain fog. Right now, I feel perfectly happy.
Okay.
But if that were a thing, then I might say, you know what? Some people say I should be eating liver right now. And I'm not saying I would never try it. I just have zero reason to try it right now.
Yes.
Because eating normally priced meat from a grocery store that is grain finished actually tastes better to me, and it's cheaper. I'm not having any issues. So I don't think there's any reason for me to be like, let me eat something that doesn't taste as good to me and cost more. No.
Right. So, like, why change something that's not broken, right?
But as needed, I've heard these things enough that, like, I know some things that I could try. Sure. And I'm not opposed to them. I would eat some liver if I needed to. I just don't really want to.
So what about the veterans? Do a lot of them, or do any of them eat the nose to tail, or is this kind of like a newish thing that people are starting to bring out?
So Charles Washington and he's the head of Zeroing In on Health. He's been at this, I think he's at like 12 years now.
Oh, okay.
And Dana Spencer Shute, she is the Zero Carb Health.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us have been buddies a long time. We don't. We just eat the meat that we like, which is our favorite's ribeye for most of us.
Okay.
And Charles actually eats a lot of pork, but I think it's just as much for cost and taste as anything. I mean, he just enjoys it. Amber O'Hearn, yes. I think he eats some organs, but it's just because she sometimes wants them. Like, okay. I don't even remember now, maybe liver of something. I don't know. But it's not real. I don't think she would call herself nose to tail. I think for the most part, she's just eating steak and occasionally wants some organs too. The Andersons, they don't. They just eat steak.
Yeah, they told me they prefer the conventional steaks as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you guys also differentiate, like, oh, this is not organic, this is not pasture raised, this is not grass fed? Is it kind of like, no, let's just eat meat and not worry about all these frilly stuff? Okay.
All of us that I know of, I'm listing the ones right off my head that are at around the 10-year or more mark. Okay. I don't think, if I'm wrong, guys, I'm sorry, any of them really seek out super particular things about their meat.
Okay.
You know, I think we all like just a nice fatty steak, a normal ribeye, like from a grocery store, I think does it for all of us.
Yeah, I try to tell that to people. So, I say, from a nutritional perspective, if you were to break down the nutrition in liver versus like a muscle meat, it's true, there is more nutrition, but I also think that, all of your stories, it brings wisdom to the community, right? So learn from what Kelly went through with the eating too low fat of proteins and the struggles, the cravings, etc. And so when you just go back to basics, which I think most of the zero carb carnivores started with, and not worried about all this excess stuff, it makes the diet so simple and the lifestyle so simple and so easy to follow. But I think, there's so many people now playing cooks in the kitchen, and they're making this so complicated. And so, well, we need to balance this amino acid with that amino acid, this organ meat with that organ meat, make sure to get, and all this stuff. And it's just like, let's just go back to what, all the veterans are doing. And it's really eat to satiety, trust your body, listen to your body, and just eat meat, and whatever meat that you like, right? And so
there it is. That's it.
That is what, I mean, from listening to all of your stories, that is what I try to push too. Because I think tried and true, you just have to go back to that's why we story share, right? It's because we want to learn and not make the mistakes that were made in the past, right? And so one question I had for you is, a lot of people I notice also, because what I'm hearing from you though is that you don't eat a lot of processed meat and you don't eat a lot of dairy. So there are people that end up eating just kind of like sausages and deli meat. So I do think there's a chance you can gain a little bit of weight with that because it's just processed food. So what's your take on just eating like bacon and, hot dog, sausages, etc.? And then also, what is your take on, I just had a blank, and then, what is your take on dairy?
Okay, when I do hear people on carnivore who say, really, I'm never cheating, I'm really eating just meat, eggs, and cheese, and it's like, and you're still gaining, and it's not like what I described where you were starving and probably should bounce back just a little bit, where it seems kind of like, well, that's weird, you probably didn't need that extra 20 pounds. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm trying to be judgy, but And so I say, when you say meat, eggs, and cheese, describe what your day looks like. And if it sounds like they're eating a block of cheese with a pile of bacon and some hot dogs, then yeah. It's like, well, I feel like those foods, I have seen that be problematic.
Yeah.
For one thing, it can really throw off your hunger signals. Sometimes just a plain steak, I may feel like I'm not really that hungry. Or some plain burgers, I'm not really that hungry. But you throw a sausage with a plate of cheese, like, well, I could eat, It's suddenly, it's very hard for some people to even feel hunger versus not hunger with certain foods.
Sure.
So sometimes keeping it very simple, just eat some steak. Just give it a shot for a few weeks. See if you're still gaining then. For most people, if they literally cut it back to just beef and water, they realize, oh, no, I really wasn't hungry all the time. Like, it was just mouth hunger and the fact that sausage tastes amazing and cheese is addictive. And it is for me too. I will have some cheese every once in a while. I'm not like, no, I can't touch cheese. Mm-hmm. But if it's one of those things where the more I have, the more I want.
Yes.
And I have to watch it because I don't feel as good. I get kind of a little drippy nose going on. Acne flare-ups, not bad, but where it's like, oh, what's that? Like, oh, too much cheese. So I don't think it's optimal. It's okay. I don't think it's optimal. Is it better than, for somebody that's new to this, is it better than eating your burritos and donuts? Well, yeah, and if that's what you need for a little while to like ease you into this, have some bacon and cheese for heaven's sakes, because that's way better than, standard American stuff. But if you're, a year into this and still wondering, why am I not looking and feeling like I want to? It's probably that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So that's what I tell a lot of people is in the beginning, just eat anything from the animal kingdom, even if it's processed. Then after you get over that kind of glucose dependency, then shift more to higher quality meats in terms of real food meats, not necessarily just organic, but and then from there, because the thing is, a lot of these sausages, they add the corn syrup, they add the maltodextrin in the deli meats, and they add these fillers and sugary foods that, again, it starts that cravings. And so I know a lot of people, like, they turn to pork rinds with cream cheese because they're like, well, that's all carnivore. And so I think it's okay occasionally, but if that's your primary diet, then that's why you're not getting over the cravings. And you're like, I can't really trust my hunger signals because I keep wanting to eat. But there are many people that will eat bags and bags of pork rinds because they're kind of waiting for that other food that they're missing to kick in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's I think it's good to hear that if you stick to more of the real meats, then this shouldn't really be a problem. Yeah. Have you ever dealt with constipation? Because that's another one that always comes up.
No, and for those that do, once you hear what they're eating, it does tend to be really high protein, lower fat, like purposefully only eating the white meat of the chicken, or only, and they're like, oh, again, I'm sure I look at them the way people looked at me when I first started this, like, why are you doing that? People who accept that fat is part of the animal and just eat an untrimmed steak,
yes,
that is not normally an issue. And people casually say to me all the time, like outside of this community, like in the rest of my life,
yeah,
like, oh, I couldn't eat like that. I would never poop. And I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily want to talk about poop with everybody outside of this community, but that's not a problem for most zero carbers. And I tell people, if you're constipated, add more fat.
Yes.
And if you're going to the bathroom running with a looser issue, then you may need to cut back on the fat a little bit. There's a balance there, but it's not like we're all just sitting around constipated.
I know, I agree. I think you didn't have enough fiber for 10 years, so you must be so bloated. Yeah.
Right.
I think the other thing is also cheese. So some people I notice when they switch to carnivore, they'll just kind of depend on cheese to kind of get them through. But they end up eating blocks and blocks of cheese, and then they get super constipated, which I think dairy can do to you. So, I mean, everything you say is exactly what I say to other people, is up the fat or lower the fat, depending on, the type of stools. What about your kids? Do they eat meat-based? Do they eat carnivore?
I'm the only completely zero carb carnivore in my house.
Okay.
Do I think zero carb is great for kids? Absolutely. I think it's a challenge these days to have your children be complete zero carb carnivores. I do. I think there's a lot of influence upon what children have. So my kids have never had added sugar to anything.
Okay.
And they've never tasted potatoes or grains. Like, they've never had bread or cracker. So I feel like we're doing okay over here, but I allow them to eat vegetables if they want them, and they have limited amounts of fruit. I don't just let them eat, because that's a lot of sugar.
It is.
I mean, we know that. Of course, other people are like, you limit their fruit? I do. Yes, I limit their fruit. But they are allowed to have some. That's their treat. That's the closest thing to a treat they have. And they love fruit, but I really have to be like, okay, guys, here's your apple.
So how old are your kids right now?
My oldest is 8.
Okay.
6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, so you have a 3-year-old too. Okay. So then your 8-year-old and 6-year-old, do they ever, when they go to school, or if they go to school, do they ever say, Mom, at the birthday party, or my friend had a cupcake, like, why can't I? Do they ever feel that kind of disconnect with?
So they've never had a cupcake, and they actually are pretty grossed out by it. The thing with the sugar cravings in kids is they're only addicts if they're addicts.
Yeah.
Like, kids are addicted to sugar, but if they've never had it, they don't want it at all. My kids don't even like the smell of it. Like, they're really kind of turned off by it. Now, how this is going to play out, when they're 18 and able to buy whatever they want, I don't know. I'll have to let you know. But for right now, they don't act interested in it at all. So what I do, I don't want them sitting at a party eating nothing. Right? I mean, that's sad. That's a little sad for me. If there's nothing at a party I can have, you didn't have one plate of bacon, nothing, that's a little sad.
Right.
So I just keep something in their book bag, an apple or some type of fruit, a little box of raisins. I know we're zero carbers, so that sounds like you give them raisins, but yeah, I give them just unsweetened fruit.
Okay. No, that's smart. I never thought of doing that. I should actually do that, because lately I'll just let them have like a quarter of a quarter of a quarter, and so it's like, okay, that's the way you kind of fit in, but maybe I should just bring fruit. And I never thought of that, but okay, that's
used to go into their book bag. Their teachers, I tell them at the beginning of the year, they go to the school where I work.
Oh,
so
okay.
They all know I'm a weirdo anyway. And I'm like, so we don't this and this. And they're like, yeah, we know. And I said, but if there's a party, you could just, tell them, do you want to go get something out of your book bag? And they'll go grab something out of their book bag. They sit and eat. All of their friends at school, I guess in kindergarten, they would ask my daughter, maybe my son too, and last year, some questions like, why don't you want to eat it? And she became really confident at just saying, like,
oh, that's awesome.
Or I just would rather eat this. But I don't make them do that anymore. They literally would much rather have that.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty powerful. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, even with keto, they're like, oh, you're damaging your kids. It's balanced. You should have them have a little bit of everything, and it's so refreshing to hear that even after 8 years, your kids are confident in what they're eating and not have to worry about, well, I want to be like so-and-so. So that's pretty, it's refreshing to hear. If we were to switch gears a little bit and talk about blood work. So I know you mentioned that your blood work looks good.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about blood work? So do you do like a physical every year? How is your kind of blood work looked over the years?
So unfortunately, I went several years without going to the doctor very much, and he was about to retire. So any of my very, very anything older than 15 years ago.
Okay.
I don't have, but I remember he used to say, oh, your blood sugar is getting kind of high. I mean, I was 260 pounds. I guarantee you it wasn't great.
Right.
I mean, even at age 25, I'm sure it wasn't great. He would kind of stuff, but I don't have that. Now I'm looking at 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. I've already had my blood work done this year.
Oh, okay.
So my total cholesterol, which I do not put a lot of stock in, but people want to know. That's the one number. Everybody's like, what's your cholesterol? I'm like, who cares? But it's 167.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, whatevs, right?
What's your LDL and your HDL?
Okay. LDL runs at 100.
Oh, okay.
HDL.
That's really good. Okay.
HDL is 60.
Okay.
It was 50.
What about your triglycerides?
And triglycerides 42.
Oh, wow. That's really good. Okay.
Right? Yeah. My ratio, the one that we all know really matters the most, your triglycerides and good cholesterol.
Right.
It's really good. Really good. So I know I used to have the math figured up there, but I think it's like 0.9.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's really, really good.
I went on an interview one time, and the chick was not zero carb. And I hadn't really done my homework to know that first, or I probably would not have done this interview. It was like a super healthy podcast. And she's like, yeah, but what is your C-reactive protein number? And I was like,
inflammation.
That's been a few years ago, and I didn't even know what she was talking about. Well, as it turns out, that a perfectly healthy person, your doctor doesn't even run that test.
Right. They don't.
So I'm flipping through papers. I was like, I don't even see that on here. And she's like, well, you should find out and get back to me. So I talked to my doctor. He's like, why would I do that? You are incredibly healthy. I said, well, I'll pay for it. So he did it this spring.
Okay.
I had it done. And I didn't even know exactly what it was about. But once I read up on it, I thought, oh, that actually would be kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, it's inflammation in your body, which obviously if you're feeling good, you don't have inflammation, and which is why your doctor probably didn't do those numbers. But so what did your results come out?
0.5.
Okay.
He's like, well, that's the lowest I've ever seen. So good job.
So did you contact the podcast person again?
My good friend Danielle was like, I hope you called her right back. And I don't think I ever did. Okay. It was one of those things where
your time, yeah.
The podcast was already out. It's not like she was gonna go back
edit it, right?
It. I felt like I looked like an idiot for not knowing at that point what she was talking about.
No, it's not right. It's not a common.
The C-reactive protein. How could you not know? But at that point, I didn't. My doctor had never mentioned it.
Yeah, no, it's not a common test that they run typically. It's becoming more common because it's a indication that you can have heart disease, and so that's why. But in general, I mean, that's another metric that carnivores have to use to kind of validate that the diet is not bad, and that's probably the only reason many carnivores know the numbers. But in general, I don't think the average person on the street knows what C-reactive protein is, because I mean, they, like you said, they don't really run it. It's a little bit more expensive, and again, it goes back to like, does insurance want to pay for it, and does the patient have signs of inflammation that you needed to run this test? So you're totally normal that you didn't know. That lady was not being the nicest, and obviously there's a set agenda, right?
Yes.
So that makes a lot of sense. Going to the mental health side again about the diet. So I know a lot of people say, all right, I'm months into the diet, I feel great, I don't crave sugar, but in moments where I used to turn to sugar and carbohydrates, I still get those thoughts of, well, I used to, in this stressful time, I snack, right? And so maybe they use pork rinds now. I don't know what it is, but how have you overcome the kind of like the sense of security, the coping mechanisms, and all of that with your relationship with food, and now you feel free on that end?
So a lot of times we advise people to start when they're new to zero carb, and they do feel a void, like all of their favorite parts of life or food that they no longer have.
Right.
And it leaves this real emptiness. And so we'll advise, like, go start a new hobby, take a lesson. For me, I got pregnant at this point.
Right, okay.
My hobby. I've got 3 little humans. I stay plenty busy. I do sometimes at night when my husband is watching TV with me. He's got his bowl of ice cream, or he mostly eats ice cream. And I'm sitting over there, and it does feel kind of weird to have nothing, even this many years later. So I like to crochet. I'll sit and crochet and watch TV with him, and there's something like really calming and cathartic. At this point, I don't know that I'm exactly replacing carbs because I'm pretty much over that. But It is like, well, he's over there doing something, and then I'm over here doing something. I make lots of scarves. Great of a crocheter, lots of scarves. But mostly just because I find it to be sort of a calming activity.
Yes.
Some people decide to go out and learn, all manner of new hobbies. Just find something new in your life to enjoy, other than just eating. Maybe, take up some reading or dance lessons, or go out and join a book club or something. But it can leave quite a void for people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always say you have to find your triggers, and then once you find your triggers, when you're not in an emotional state, figure out what can you do instead of those triggers of turning to food, then to find something else that you can lean on, whether it's like calling a friend, because sometimes it's not the times when you're kind of bored, but when you're you have that emotional high, you're at like an emotion 10, and then you used to just binge, right? So what do you do in those moments when you're not binging anymore? So a lot of people have to start self-reflecting and sitting with their emotions, which is super hard to do, right? Especially if you don't want to do that and you haven't done it for decades. And so it's really, this whole process is also like just understanding who you are as a being and what needs you have. So it's really all encompassing. And so yeah, for in your instances when you had like those emotional times, like what did you kind of like what worked for you?
I'm a fairly, well, I'm going to say fairly, I'm a really spiritual person. So, I mean, there are literally times where, for me, praying, reflecting, reading the Bible, for me, is incredibly helpful. I became quite a bike rider for a while. I found that to be very cathartic, not in an exercisey kind of way, just to get out and see the world. Like, you can think while you ride a bike, and yet it's very centering too. Like, you're seeing the world go by. I don't know. I kind of enjoy to think that way. It's been a while back.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that you don't have to be like, yes, for A scenario, B has happened. C, it's just the fact that you're living life now and you don't have to worry about these things, which is amazing. It's telling me that, hey, if I have to lean on food for XYZ reasons in the future, I may not even know what those XYZ reasons are, and I'm just living. And that is, I mean, it's so powerful and so beautiful, because I've been doing a community challenge and I get emails from people that are like, for the first time in 50 years, I feel free from sugar. And it's so powerful, to not have to have this kind of like drug take over your life, and you can actually live and be present with your loved ones, right? So it's just amazing. And so as we're closing soon, a lot of the zero carb carnivores that you kind of started, or were around when you started 10 years ago, are a lot of them still following that way of eating?
Yes, yeah, it's great. We're still good friends. We moved from zeroing in on health as a forum with a bunch of journals to
Mhm.
now it's a Facebook page, and that's
Right.
the group that I help admin that I was talking about has like 26,000, I don't know, 27.
That's
But we're
amazing.
still dear friends, and many of us have been together this entire 10 years, and some of them longer than that.
Wow, that's amazing. And so the community, so what I'm hearing from you is that the community aspect is so important, because obviously not everyone around us is zero carb carnivores. So for you, while you were going through that 5 year cravings and then the 6 month of like gaining weight, was a lot of your sanity kind of because of the support of the community?
Yes, I really don't think I could have made it through that 6 months. I wouldn't have even known. I wouldn't have even known what I was doing. I found that group, and it was like, oh, look at all these healthy-looking people, and they are only eating meat. I didn't even know. Like I said, that's how I found them, to find out, is that possible? And then I
Right.
saw how they were living, and I talked to them, and I was instantly, I mean, for real, that day, as soon as I found them, I was like, I want to do this.
Yes.
If then I had suddenly been cut off from that, I don't think I would have made it.
Right. Yeah.
Like that was imperative for me.
Yes, yes. No, I think that's why these Facebook groups are taking off, because when you're on this journey that's so different from kind of like status quo, if you don't have the support from other people that say, when you're doing well, it doesn't matter what other people say, right? But then on the days that you feel like sluggish, or you're craving
Yeah.
sugar, or you're gaining weight, in those times it's so beneficial to have support, because they'll basically be telling you what you're doing is right, just keep going, right? And if
Yeah.
you don't have that, then it's so easy to let the naysayers in during those days. And so I think
Yeah.
these Facebook groups are so powerful. And I'll list your Facebook group specific. It's with Charles, right? So
It is.
I'll link to all of that in the show notes. One complaint I do get is, hey, I was carnivore for a while and I felt great, but I felt that I could incorporate other foods. And then once I did, now I feel worse. But
Right.
their argument is it's because of carnivore. Now I've become intolerant to other foods. And then I always say, well, maybe your body had this bar where now, it feels great. And now when you add other foods, it's telling you actually this is how your body really reacts. And it's been sort of humming along the other times when you would be able to eat it and not feel any symptoms. I don't know if you've experienced that with other people, just kind of trying other.
Yeah, I hear people say, well, I did it for a while and then I stopped and I gained all the weight back and I feel horrible now, worse than ever. And it was like, yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
but they blame carnivore for that.
I know. Like if I literally found a bottle of magic pills, and I've told people this, and if you started taking them and you suddenly felt amazing and you lost weight, and then it's like, yes, and then you're like, well, I will stop taking them and it all goes back. Everybody on earth will be like, well, duh, you got to start taking those magic pills again, you know? But
Right,
some
right.
people are like, once you stop, it all comes back. People will still say that to me. Once
Yeah.
you start eating regular again, it'll all come back. I'm like, that's why I will never do that.
Right. No, I'm on the same page with you. So as we're closing, are there any recommendations, guidance? A lot of people, when it comes January 1st, they're like, I'm going to start a new diet. I'm sure some people are going to want to try carnivore. Are there any kind of like overarching recommendations and guidance that you would give these people?
In any way you can. And some, people come here from all different. Some people may have just had a giant bowl of pasta and now they're thinking, well, maybe I'll give this a shot. I don't think that's how most people come to carnivore. I think it's normally like baby steps, low carb, keto,
Yeah.
but not always. Sometimes people
Yeah, no, you're
stumble
right.
upon it straight from their bowl of pasta. If that's the case, however people can lower carbs is a great thing. Just start there, cut out carbs. But if you don't want to spend the rest of your days like using self-control, feeling deprived, being restrictive on like, I've got to cut back on carbs some more, then just let it all go and just eat a bunch of meat. Do what my doctor said, just eat as much meat as you want. Say you only give it 6 months. That's nothing. Give it 6 months. See how you feel. And, if people aren't able to commit to that and all they're able to do is switch to lower carb, oh, well, okay, good job. It's going to be harder. That's fine. You can do that. That's better for you than what you're doing. It's going to be hard. And you're never going to get to the point of like, wow, I love low carb. There are not many people, I don't think, that ever like, man, low carb feels easy and awesome. It feels so free.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when you put it that way, I don't think there's anyone, even people that are moderators, or that can kind of survive off eating a little bit of carbs and not have to binge. I do see them still kind of have to dance around with the sweeteners and the sugar. So you're right. I don't think there's really anyone that says I can consistently eat the same thing with carbs and be okay.
No, I don't either. So I think just try to feel what that freedom feels like. If you're able to get there, give it several months. And then if legit, you've given this several months and you really feel like, nah, I feel worse, I look worse. Okay, my bad. That never happens though.
I totally agree.
I don't see that happening, but you can always go back to whatever crummy life you're living right now. Do it. I'm kidding. Also, I will say, if topics, I have written quite a bit about zero carb pregnancy, religion with zero carb. Some people get kind of hung up on the Bible's take on diet versus zero carb. That's just one topic.
Do you want to talk about that really quick? So what are you talking about, like the fruit?
Well, people have this idea that moderation is everything, is like a Bible verse, which actually it isn't. But anyway, there is an idea of that somewhat prevalent. So I have a blog. It's called My Zero Carb Life.
Okay.
ZeroCarbLife.com. And I've written quite a bit about religion and zero carb, before and after pictures, pregnancy and zero carb, 6 of my best tips for zero carb.
Okay.
Zero carb is easier than low carb. I haven't written a lot lately because I find myself thinking, I have nothing more to say other than I'm still eating meat. That would be like blog entry number 72. I'm still eating meat, still feeling great. Like I've kind of run out of things to say. Yeah. But I think a lot of the topics that people ask about the most, well, we've addressed a lot of them, but the ones that maybe we didn't, I've really tried to put in some thought over the past decade.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to visit that, I'm not selling a book. I'm not trying to sell merchandise at all. I'm a music teacher. I have a job. I'm good. But I do have a blog if someone thinks it's useful. I don't get paid for being an admin on any Facebook page whatsoever. So come or not, it's fine.
Yeah, you have no agenda. You're just paying it forward. I get it. No, trust me, I get it. I've read your blog. I think I read your story I think when I first started this, like almost 2 years ago, but I don't remember seeing religion ones, and I'm faith-based too, so I'm definitely going to look at that. I'm curious. But I did read your story, and you're very, very well written. I think there's like your personality shines in your writing. So yes, I think everyone should check it out. Her writing is very fun, and your story is really good too. So
I think the main post that I made about religion was like Jesus Christ and the carbohydrate. So if you just Google like carbohydrate Jesus, you might find it.
Okay, yeah, and I'll link to everything in the show notes again. So is there anywhere else that people can find you? I know we just talked about your website, the Facebook group. What about your Instagram? Are you on Twitter?
I have a Twitter account. I don't even know what it is. I don't know. I'm not much.
I don't really use Twitter that much either. Yeah,
I have an Instagram account. It's one of those things where like, hold on, I think it's so bad. Okay, it's Kelly _Hogan 91. Kelly Hogan 91. And I do post there fairly regularly. That's not a personal, but you're not going to find a million pictures of my kids. I get a lot of friend requests on Facebook, but literally you don't want that. It's just my kids and my adorable dog. That's it. But Instagram and on Facebook on the Zeroing In on Health, and then at myzerocarblife.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Your website's amazing. I think, again, your posts are so fun to read. So, and I'll, again, link to everything. But thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. And, you know, honestly, you just do this to pay it forward. And it's, you know, there's no agenda. And I mean, it's amazing. Your story is amazing. And I mean, you're so much fun. And I love that you're part of this community. So thank you again. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for having me, Judy. Bye.
Oh, thank you. Bye. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm sure you guys enjoyed Kelly. She's such a magnanimous personality, and I'm sure you guys enjoyed all her just shares and just her honesty and just her funniness. I hope that it also shows you that you can do carnivore for long term and that it's actually not dangerous. I know a lot of people believe that, well, the consequences of nutrient deficiencies from a meat-based diet takes a little longer to, you know, come to fruition. So I think several of these zero carb carnivore veterans really show that that may not be correct. Yes, people can argue their anecdotal stories, but we see them share on their Facebook groups. And again, all of that will be in the show notes. Okay guys, have a good one. Make sure to eat a lot of meat. Take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have to live. Okay guys, take care. Bye.